Welcome back. It's Typology Gifts. I'm Dan. We're here with Liz. And if you haven't watched Part A, you should go back and watch Part A. I always make that recommendation because I think you need to have the context of this video. Watch the prior video. All right. So, the question that I have that I thought about during the break is, first of all, are you at all picky in food or things like that? And then I have a follow-up question based on depending on what your answer is. So what is
No,
your you're
I
not
was never picky at all
okay.
or anything.
And so my next question, my next question was, is there anything you are picky about? Kind of like how some people are picky about food or things like that.
Yeah, I'm not really picky about anything. I'll try anything once, basically.
Okay.
Um,
And is it because? Do you think it's because? What's it? Oh, I thought you said
no,
something.
nothing.
Do you think it's because you like everything, or do you think it's because you don't know how you'll feel about that, so you want to try it?
Um, I, I guess there could be a little bit of just liking everything, but a lot of it is just like I don't know how to feel. It was brought up. You have to try everything on the plate at least once. You have to at least try it.
Mhm.
So that kind of just stuck with me because I'll
Mhm.
never know what I like or not if I don't try it. So
Mhm. 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 Okay. And do you do you think that uh, when it comes to processing your emotions, when it comes to processing your feelings, like dealing with them or whatever, are you capable of processing those feelings on the fly, kind of as things are happening, or do you require more time after the fact to process, or are you somewhere in the middle? Like, where are you on that spectrum of being able to process things kind of on the fly, or needing to basically digest your feelings?
most of the time I can work with my emotions like just on the fly.
Hmm.
But every once in a while it will take me a little bit, like an all nighter or something, to just work through
Hmm.
my emotions through something. So
Uh-huh, uh-huh. So most of the time, would you say that you know how you feel?
most of the time, yeah.
Okay. Um, so what I like this is a tough one for me actually, because there are aspects of two different types that you can only know somebody so much in a short period of time. Um, so here's I kind of want to ask you maybe another question or two before I start to narrow in on something. Um, do you think that you're more in tune with other people's feelings or your own feelings, if you had to compare?
Probably I know exactly what you're asking with this question, which and the
Could
thing is I
be
don't
biasing the response.
yeah.
Well,
So I don't really
let me just throw you a curveball. You
okay.
might think you know what I'm asking you with this question, but I might not be asking exactly what you think I'm asking,
Okay.
because I might be looking for something else than what you think I'm looking for.
Okay.
Unless you've narrowed the options down to these two types that I'm thinking of as well, and you know which the differences of them are already, and you know what I'm already thinking about. If that's the case, then you might be right. So it really depends.
Maybe those two types, maybe a completely different two sets of types. Um,
Yeah.
I think I know what two types you're going back and forth between.
Oh, you think so? Well,
Yeah.
okay. So let's talk about the cognitive function stuff first. You know about that stuff, I think, right?
Yeah.
How much do you know about that stuff?
I have a pretty good handle on it, especially with the judging access, like the thinking, feeling, and introverted, thinking, extroverted, all of those accesses.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I, it's kind of more nebulous for like the intuitive and sensing
Mm-hmm.
things. Those functions are kind of more of a, is it this way, is it that way?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Haven't really gotten a solid answer for those. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, it could be interesting if the two types you think that I am thinking of are different, or if one of the two are different, and then we agree on one of those two types, and if we do, then that might be a more likely type that you are.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you might be one type, and I think you also might be that type possibly, so that could be interesting. Okay, so let me just start with the cognitive functions stuff. We'll get that out of the way. Um, I I think it was pretty obvious to me early on that you have a strong extroverted sensing preference to me, um, as well as introverted intuition, but seems to be strong extroverted sensing preference. Um, and the reasons for that come down to you know how you mentioned and I can say this because I presume to be an INFJ, and if I'm not an INFJ, I'm probably an INTJ, but I'm probably an INFJ. Um, is with extroverted sensing is it's almost like you're kind of waiting for input. You're waiting for something to happen, kind of, and then you can react, and then you could do something. And so that I can identify with that. Whereas extroverted intuitives, introverted sensors, they can kind of work with what they've got, and they can start to that's what has them so good at improvisation because um, they've got this kind of really great backlog in their heads, and they can remix it over and over again into all these kinds of really weird creative ways that are like, what does that have to do with that, you know? And they can come up with stuff really fast, whereas extroverted sensors uh, need a lot of times they need some catalyst of some kind. It could be internal, but it's a slower. Let's see, it's faster moving in some ways and slower moving in other ways. I guess I would say it's like faster moving in a reactive sense, but it's slower moving in a proactive sense. So that was as I listened to you talk, like as I the cadence of your voice and things like that is more, it's slower, you know, and that's introverted intuitives. People who use introverted intuition need more time to zap those thoughts together and express them. And there's also kind of like a desire to kind of nail it, like get it right, whatever it is. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of different things you said that kind of led me to think you're thinking about that like kind of perfect state of whatever it is that you're doing, you know, the final state, something to that degree. That's the way an introverted intuitive thinks, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
they are very convergent in like their way of thinking. And there's a lot of generalizations too. Like it's hard to be specific. Introverted intuitives have difficulty being specific, and calling upon specific examples and giving you specific details,
Mm-hmm.
and myself included. So I'm saying these things about myself. But extroverted intuitives have a really interesting grasp on the specific, and they can kind of take the specific and manipulate it and do different things with it. And that's what. So, um, those are my thoughts on why I think that you probably prefer to use that introverted intuition, extroverted sensing Um, any thoughts on that before I say anything else? Because that kind of narrows down a bunch of types, kind of.
That that's definitely where I've ended up. As soon as I learned about the cognitive functions, that's
Mm-hmm.
basically all the types that I've thought they could be
Mm-hmm.
um, were introverted intuition and extroverted sensing. So there is that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I have no grasp. Um, it's funny because separate, looking at it separate,
Mm-hmm.
I understand the thinking and feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
But for myself, I have no idea.
Sure. Okay, so you want
Basically,
to
where that
do you
is.
want to tell me what the two types that you had it narrowed down to, and then we'll we'll see if I guessed those as well. And you can watch the video afterwards to see if I was lying, if I was just pulling your chain
Yeah.
here. You'll know which types I thought you were. So.
Well, coming in, I always I've gone back and forth between all the IN types.
Mhm.
The and lately I've been thinking more of INTJ or INFJ. But based on like what you've been asking me and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that, a little bit, I thought that maybe you were thinking one of the two ISPs. IS. I thought that maybe that's what you were thinking.
Yeah, ISTP and ISFP. Yep. So so that's interesting that you were thinking INJ and I was thinking ISP. Um, and I know a lot more about the INJs than I do about the ISPs, although I do know a lot about the ISPs. But so I'm happy to talk about all these four different types, and maybe we can find some clarity on there. Certainly, all four types use introverted intuition, so that we can check that off the list. So really, you have two types that are using extroverted feeling, introverted thinking, and you have two types that are using introverted feeling, extroverted thinking. So, so if you can narrow that down, then you can at least eliminate two of them. Um, but I think you can probably maybe also eliminate dominant introverted intuition. And I'll give you some explanations on why I think probably. Um, People who use dominant introverted intuition describe to me the people that I've see. This is one problem of MBTI, by the way. The system describes itself, so it's kind of
Mhm.
it's circular logic in a way. So you can say, well, I know what an INTJ is like. I know he's like right over here. Well, how'd you find out what he was like? Well, I read it. I read about it over here. And how did they know? Well, they observed INTJs. And it's like, well, okay, I'm stuck in this circle of like, I only know what an INTJ is like because I've read certain things and I've known people that I thought were INTJs. So therefore, but I guess if you think about things from the standpoint of spectrums and, you know, I know a lot of people, and I know people who are like this, and I know people who are like that, you know, and they're on a spectrum, and there's people in the middle. And so people who prefer introverted intuition, um, they whenever I meet those kinds of people, um, there's a lot of comparing notes that we do about our intuitions, if that makes sense. And it doesn't happen intentionally, it sort of happens as we go in a conversation. I can tend to pick up on all of the insights that they've had about everything, which is a lot. Dominant introverted intuitives have had insights about everything, and they can talk to you in quite depth about all of the insights they've had about all the different things uh, that they are thinking about. Um, and it didn't come to our it didn't come to us in a conversation to naturally go that direction. Now, does that mean that you're not an INFJ or an INTJ? No, it does not. That doesn't mean that you're not one of those two types. That's just explaining the first half hour of this video as far as why I wasn't led in that direction. INFJ. INFJs will go to pretty strong lengths to try to maintain harmony within a group, and kind of make it their own personal thing to do that, or they will just completely shut themselves off from the group altogether. A lot of times it's just kind of one or the other. Either they care about that group or they don't, and if they do, then they'll put in the work. I don't know if I don't know if that sounds like you or not. You'll have to think back, kind of in your own dealings. As far as INTJs are concerned, I think my brother is an INTJ, and I'm business partners with, have been business partners with a few of them, and both INFJs and INTJs, almost, I think probably without question, have all been tremendously busy writers. Like, writing a lot. I write papers. I write I've been writing my entire life. And when I meet other INFJs or INTJs, they also are just writing a lot. So I'm not saying that means you're not an INFJ or an INTJ, but I'll just say that's a thing that I've observed. For whatever reason, introverted intuition, you're having a lot of insights. They're all coming at you, and it's hard because you're not using a lot of introverted sensing, so you're not logging all kinds of information about that. You're just kind of condensing. So you have to write things down to get it out of your head, to get it logged, kind of, because you can't store it all in its kind of uncondensed form. And I think INTJs do a lot of their writing around more real-world specifics, real-world practical things. That's not to say that ISTPs and ISFPs don't write. They certainly do. But I think that from knowing ISTPs and ISFPs, one, the writing will be very purposeful. It will be very specific to whatever it is. I have to do this writing. I have to specifically do this writing. So it's often not the ISTPs and ISFPs I've known. It depends. ISFPs, of course, are well known for being the musician type, the lyricist and things like that. And so they will, they're kind of known for writing songwriting and things like that. So, but that doesn't mean that every ISFP is a writer, and that every INFJ is a writer. You know what I mean? So I'm only working with sample sizes of small numbers of people, and what I've read online and what I watch on videos and things like that. I think that the mentions of using introverted intuition throughout the call are definitely in line with the amount of introverted intuition that ISTPs and ISFPs use. I think there might be a misconception that sensing types don't use intuition, which I think is hilarious, because you can't use sensing without intuition, and vice versa. So it's kind of they're just two sides of the same coin. But also, I think what the way I would just put it is that sensing types often will use their intuition to support their sensing, and then intuitive types will often use sensing to support their intuition. So you're just using it in a different way, kind of. You're using it to support other easier to use cognitive functions, maybe. And I think what you said was interesting about being perfectly fine sort of on this like assembly line kind of situation where you're like, I have all these pieces and I can build something and I can put it together and it has a sense of completeness to it. That was leaning me in the sort of that ISTP direction kind of, but also still kind of ISFP, I think, because I think I've known some ISFPs that like the tactile nature of doing something like that. I think that scratches a bit of an extroverted sensing itch, um, to do that kind of thing. And then to see the completeness of it, or to get to work towards the completeness of it, that's the introverted intuition part. Um, as to the satisfaction you get from it, I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, this is where splitting hairs is getting tricky now, right? Introverted feeling versus introverted thinking, which I'm sure is what the big question that you've been kind of, um, dealing with, I guess there. And I guess the if I can give you any encouragement, it's this: um, don't take this whole thing too seriously. You know what I mean? This is just like,
Yeah.
armchair psychology kind of. So no one person fits neatly into any kind of box. You know, you can be genetically, a certain species and still have all kinds of, deviations from others in that same species. You could have different ways of thinking and different physicality and different chemistry. So of course you can have different personality, um, and it's way too reductionist to think that there's only 16 types of people. There's 7 billion types of people, but we just try to narrow it down a bit to try to figure out where you are on some kind of spectrum. So if you don't reach a satisfying conclusion on this, don't be too, don't lose any sleep over that. That's what I'm saying. You got more
Yeah.
important fish to fry than thinking about that.
Yeah.
But I think probably you, with what I mean, now I kind of want to, now I've said a lot of things, so I want to hear if you have if anything I've said has triggered any thoughts in your head. I'd be interested to know, um, if anything has been thought provoking, I guess.
Yeah. Well, what what you were saying about like INFJs and like I'm surprised that didn't come up more strongly for you because I remember even like in our discussion I was telling you how with conflicts with other people um is the whole letting everything go, just totally not knowing what to do with it versus trying to work it out right then
Mhm.
with one person and then another.
Mhm.
So so I thought maybe a little bit more of that, maybe, but at the same time, I had never really taken a deeper look at possibly being a sensing type until like I got ISTJ
Mhm.
once in a random really bad quiz, but so I thought about that for a little bit,
Mhm.
but I've never really thought about that because I've always felt a strong sense of the intuition, the abstract.
Mhm.
Like my major is going to be in philosophy, so that's kind of where I naturally go to is to the intuition, which is why that's always been on my mind. Is more
Mhm.
intuition. I haven't really taken a deeper look into possibly being sensing type, but
Well, I guess don't let the whole sensing type thing scare you away from thinking about it anyways, just because there's such a, I don't know, bad stigma against it in the MBTI community, which is sad and unfortunate because I don't know, you are who you are, right? I mean, like, how can you say that certain types of people of any kind of personality, um, how can you say things negatively about that? Because, societally we need all different types of personality to be able to handle all the different kinds of things that get thrown at us. But also, I think I just hate that there's a misnomer against, that sensing types don't use intuition, or that they're not intuitive, or things like that, or that, if you are a kind of, in tune with your intuition, it's really a matter of degrees, right? I mean, you could be a sensing type that has more intuitive power than an intuitive who um, hasn't fully, I guess, awakened into their intuition. You know what I mean? Like you could be an older sensing type who has a very strong grasp of their intuition, and um, anyways, I don't know. I mean, I've made some videos on introverted intuition. Everybody uses introverted intuition to some degree, um, and some people use it a lot more. Uh, but but really, I mean, I think it's pretty. I think what we can at least say is that you're probably using introverted intuition and extroverted sensing. So maybe the challenge is to look more into extroverted sensing and just to see, hey, am I preferring extroverted sensing more than introverted intuition, or the other way around? Um, and that could potentially lead you in a certain direction. Um, How good are you at visualizing information in chart form?
Charts. If it's too complicated, I've tried to chart out something that's super complicated before,
Hmm.
um, but basic charts and stuff like that, I pretty much have a handle on charts that way.
Okay. You mentioned what could you t real quick talk a little bit more about your how much research you do?
Um, for for me, I do a lot of research in spurts of just random of like the little things that come up.
Hmm.
So like I like if like I was watching a show and then um something reminded me of something else, and then I look up, I research those connections and stuff like that. So yeah, that, or if I have an idea about what I want to do, like I want to do van life is also kind of what I want to do for a little bit.
Hmm.
So I go into that rabbit hole for a little bit. Lately I've been down the MBTI rabbit hole a little bit trying to figure this out, and
Hmm.
so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
rabbit hole reason.
okay. Well, that was another thing I was curious about because I think INFJ specifically, well, INFJs and ISTPs both use a lot of introverted thinking, which is, that's a pretty heavily, those are pretty heavy research kinds of um, thought process, um, very heavy logic based thought process, and then INTJs as well, kind of notoriously well researched, well read. Um, And so I guess you could think about your relationship to research. If research is a frequent thing, then you're, I would say, probably more likely to be an INFJ or an INTJ. If research is a more sporadic thing, then I would say you're probably more likely to be an ISTP or an ISFP. And that's not to say that those two types aren't intelligent, and or that ISTPs aren't well researched, because my other brother's an ISTP. He's an accountant. He has a college degree. He's very good at researching, um, and but now ISFPs, on the other hand, may have a trickier time not preferring introverted thinking, and also not having as high of a preference in introverted intuition. So that could lead, if you think that research for you is more sporadic to when it comes, whenever it hits you, whenever the situationally, versus kind of information sponge. I'd say if you're an information sponge, you're probably an INFJ. If you're um, or possibly INTJ, but probably more likely INFJ. INFJs just get stuck in this research spiral is what happens. They just research and research and research, and then they research the things that they just researched about, and it just continues on and on and on forever. Um, and INTJs will stop because they have more productive things to do. Now they will research and research and research until they've gotten to the thing that okay, time to be productive. So then they'll go back to productivity mode, um, and well, I don't know, ISFPs and ISTPs. I guess it depends on the maturity of the person, or not all ISFPs and ISTPs are the same, so I can't say. I don't know if I've made this any easier for you or if it's now harder. I'm not sure. You don't.
Giving me a little bit more to think about, and also a little bit more weight on the INFJ scale, because what you were talking about with, again, like what we were talking about the conflict, and I do have like a million tabs open from researching one thing, and then because of that, because yes, the inspiration for that does come up sporadically, but then something in my research will go into, I'll research that topic, and then something else will come up, and then I'll go into that topic. Like I could spend all day on Wikipedia pressing different links, going to new things, which is, I kind of think what you're.
Okay, can I give you a test, and I want to see how you do on this test?
Okay.
It's a thought experiment kind of
Yes.
test. So, I'm going to give you 3 objects, and I'd like you to tell me 5 things that those 3 objects have in common. So the 3.
Okay.
Have you heard me do this one before on a different video at all? No. Okay.
No, I haven't.
Good. Then I'm going to reuse the 3 objects that I pick usually. The 3 objects are a steak, like a steak dinner kind of steak, the moon, and a tree.
They all have different in different times. Phases of the moon, rarity of the steak, and year of the year, the tree.
Okay.
Phases.
Okay.
They all are sourced from nature. Cow, tree. It's really hard to try to come up with commonalities with those 3.
You give up?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, we'll say 1.5 maybe, or 2. We'll be generous and say 2. All right. Well, that's an introverted intuition test. So, I mean, I think somebody who's dominant introverted intuition thinks that way all the time about those commonalities between different disparate things, and this causes them to create sort of very strong architectural pathways in the mind, let's put it that way, of ideas. Now you were faster at doing that than extroverted intuitives that I run that test on, by the way. So that's why I still think you prefer introverted intuition, because you got that first one pretty quickly. You kind of started going towards the second one, and then it sort of just started falling off a little bit. So just throwing that out there.
That might be what has tripped me up too in thinking intuition too, is because I do that a lot with things that are a little bit more obvious, I guess. But those 3 things are so out of left field in my mind that
Right.
might have been tripping me up in typing too. So maybe so I should definitely look more into those ISPs.
Maybe, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's what I think the ISPs use their intuition way more with their extroverted sensing. So it has way more to do with those real situations, those realistic situations where something is prompting you, where something is coming at you, and you have to deal with it. You have to use your intuition to deal with it. And that kind of thinking that I just challenged you to do is the kind of stuff that an INFJ or an INTJ will just spend their time doing. Just a lot of, just spend a lot of time doing that kind of thing. Without really expending the effort to go there. So yeah, I'll tell you the extroverted intuition test that I do, and well, we don't have to do it, but usually what I do is I ask somebody, I give them an example of an object, like a regular object, like a rope or a garden hose or something, and I'd say, tell me 5 things that are unconventional that you could do with a garden hose, and then I'll just like sit and listen to them. Like how fast can you rattle off like 5 very unusual things? Because the extroverted intuition, you have to sort of build weird, unusual scenarios improvisationally on the spot using all of your knowledge of garden hoses and whatever else you know about. And that's for an introverted intuitive, that's difficult. to,
Mm-hmm.
to think that way. I have difficulty with that test because I have turned it around on myself and asked somebody to ask me that about some other object, and I'm sitting there like racking my brain. But the introverted intuition test, you can give me 3 objects, and I like, or anyone, people who prefer introverted intuition, I think will have an easier time at that. You can give them any 3 objects or whatever, and say, what do these 3 things have in common? And they'll just probably start rattling things off. So so that could be a way. And if you want, you can try it on me. If you want to if you want to give me any 3 objects and see what I can come up with, and see how quickly I can come up with them. But then again, I'm kind of primed for the test. So I mean, I've already tested myself on this. But you could try it with someone else if you think if you're pretty sure they use a lot of introverted intuition. You could try that test on someone else and see if they've never heard it before. They can see how they do. Maybe see how they do compared to how you did, I guess. If you find somebody who can do 3 or 4 or 5 of them, and then you can think about how do you compare to this person and the way they think.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Lots to think about.
Right, right. Okay, well, so if I would appreciate if you could write in I leave a comment, or sometimes I've thought about doing part C of these videos, like a follow-up video at some point. So maybe we'll have to, if you want to, in a few weeks or a month or whatever, however long it's taken for you to digest this and continue to do your research and whatever, you come back and share your insights, share what you've learned about yourself, and we'll see. That way we don't just leave it hanging there. We can see kind of where did you end up in this thinking.
Cool. Yeah.
And if you are an ISFP or an ISTP, I mean, you may find that it really actualizes you in a way that you hadn't before too. So who knows? Like it really is kind of like when I first took an MBTI test, I got ENFJ, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Then
Yeah, INxJ.
you
My very first.
you got INFP.
Yes.
That's interesting. So that would be more similar to ISFP than INFJ, anyways. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I got ENFJ, and I was just kind of like whatever. But then a few years later, I took a different one. I got INFJ, and then I read the description, and I was like disturbed because I was like, it felt like somebody had followed me around and like watched me through the window, and like made all kinds of weird observations about me that I didn't even know about myself, like I hadn't even thought about. And then I was just like, this is the weirdest thing. So sometimes trying to see yourself through a certain lens can lead to new insights. You know.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
Oh, and so last thing, I always like to open it up to say if you want to have, if you have a question for me or questions, uh, now's the time.
I I think I've asked questions already.
I mean, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
MBTI related, so I mean, it could be a completely
What's your
unrelated
favorite
question.
color?
Believe it or not, since I was very, very young, even back in kindergarten, I painted something black and yellow, and those two colors, black and gold or whatever, have kind of stuck with me as colors that I like. But I have a hard time with this question, honestly, because some people are like, yeah, I know exactly what my favorite color is, you know,
The
and
same.
you
Same.
you
I
struggle you struggle with that one.
struggle with that one. Lately, what I've been saying was anything that touches blue.
Nice.
Green, blue, purple.
Oh, by the way, your answer to the question about pickiness made me think maybe ISTP, because I think INFJs and INTJs are very picky for different reasons. ISFPs also can be pretty picky, but I think ISTPs are pretty chill about like all that kind of stuff. So FYI, that's what made me that was another thing that just anecdotally I can't like base that on anything but my own experience. But my observation has been that ISTPs are pretty chill about stuff like that. Because if you're
Interesting.
not using a lot of introverted feeling, introverted feelers, strong introverted feelers, and they know exactly how I like this, I don't like that, whatever, and I don't know what it is about INFJs and INTJs. I think they have such a strong sense of perfection. They have a strong sense of like ideal. This is the ideal, So so that leads to very strong particularity, about many things, food and otherwise. But I've seen that ISTPs seem to be pretty go with the flow when it comes
Yeah.
to that kind of stuff. Take that for what it's worth. I don't
All right. All right. Cool. Thank you for
know.
doing this. So.
Yeah, sure, Liz. Well, friends at home, thanks for joining us. We'll keep an eye on if you want to leave a comment in the comments, or maybe we'll see you in part C, and we'll see. But what do you think, friends at home? Do you think Liz is an ISP or an INJ? Leave a comment and tell her what you think. Maybe there's the wisdom of crowds, right? I know, right? Um, but maybe people will notice something that me and you didn't notice for some reason. I don't know. So we'll watch the comments section. All right. Thanks a lot, Liz. Have a good night.
Okay. You too.
Take care. Bye.